we know 50 years of prohibition hasn't stopped people taking drugs, right? You know, we all kind of in the 90s when we had school drug education, you know, literally take half a pill and you're going to die. And then, you know, kids go out and do that and then they don't die, right? But the system we have at the minute, you know, if you look at the law, that half a pill or that pill you had is in the same class as heroin. So there's a logic somewhere that people make and go, well, they lied to me about this pill, so this heroin thing can't be that bad, right? And it fucking, you know, because the state of, you know, the way prohibition is allowed synthetic opioids to enter the heroin market means that actually the risks to a human being taking a pill and, you know, trying smack are immensely different. And mushrooms are up there with crack and heroin. What the fuck? How does that come about? Right? So, like, you know, you create this kind of social, like, this paradigm where you're saying to kids, you know, if you try these drugs, they'll kill you. They try these drugs and they don't kill them. And then by association, they go, well, if this category says that this drug is the same as this, and this one wasn't harmless. And so I think as a society, you know, we've had a 50-year experiment of telling people don't take drugs, they're bad, and we go to prison. And for most people, something between 90, maybe 95% of people who use drugs don't have a problematic experience. They don't have a negative experience, probably even higher, right?
Yes.
But the ones that do have the problematic experience, you could reduce that number to probably 0.5% by creating a system that is based around harms. So, you know, like the tier of accessibility, the more harmful that a substance is to a user and to society, the more harmful that is, the harder it is to get, and the more guidance and supervision you will be required to you know, that level of interference increases with the harm.
All I was going to,
like I say, I think you'd find that 99% of people who use drugs, full stop, wouldn't come to any harm. But we have this system where actually we think we can just tell people off and that will solve it. And I don't understand why that. How can we not look at human beings who use drugs and say, let's treat you with a little bit of compassion and say, how can we make your life a little bit safer? You know, most people don't get like a serious opiate addiction because they want to or because they think it's fun. They do it because of trauma and because of, you know, circumstances that they've ended up in, or the way that society has treated them. And so then to look at them and go, actually, no, we don't give a shit about you. Just you can carry on being, you know, downtrodden.
We're going to put you in prison.
Yeah, we'll put you in prison because that will solve the problem. We'll let you go and buy some, you know, some adulterated smack, and that'll solve the problem. These things aren't solving the problem. This prohibition isn't solving the problem. This telling people drugs are bad, don't do them, isn't solving the problem. And I don't understand how we as a society, with all the information we have and all the data we have now, can still look at that, and the people who are making our decisions can go, yeah, let's just carry on with that because it's definitely working.
Yeah. No, you raised some brilliant points. One thing I will give you the opportunity, I suppose, to retract when I say what will happen if you did exactly implement that. Alcohol would be the hardest drug to access. Heroin, in supervised rooms around the world, there has never been an overdose. As you stated, the adulterated supply is the problem. During prohibition of alcohol in the States, tens of thousands of people died from alcohol poisoning. It wasn't because of the fucking alcohol. And granted, yeah, alcohol over long term is comorbid in like fucking 15 cancers and various other conditions. It still then has to become about the free choice. Like I said, by regulating alcohol at that level, what they did was remove all poisonings. And then by then taxing it, they took the tax to then create and pay to then reduce some of the harms of it. And so the same exact thing could be made of heroin, as you say. If then good quality, it is a plant-derived drug, people have to remember this, heroin is not a problem. It is, as you say, adulterated supply, and no one taking heroin wants to overdose. It's like shandy absinthe. If they know that heroin is always going to be shandy, they'll always take it like it's shandy. If they suddenly get an absinthe, they're fucked, unless they've got naloxone or suboxone if you're in the States. Yeah. Or in somebody to help look after them. So if we truly created that level playing field, alcohol and tobacco look quite bad. And what it'll end up doing is causing problem. And I think we're already seeing a massive problem now. It's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, is the disposable vape ban. So we're seeing like that. All that's going to do is, we know we've lived in prohibition. We know what's going to happen next year or the year after it's implemented. There will be millions of fake vapes on the market. And half of them won't have nicotine in. Some of them will have different addictive substances. You know what I mean? There'll be people trying to create and capture markets going, no, I want that knockoff Elf bar that really had a hit, and it turns out it's got spice in it. Do you know what I mean? We're seeing that with THC vapes and these other things. So there is the space, as you say, for that legal, regulated market. But there also has to be the nuance and space for the different plethora of ways that these drugs are consumed. Think of, again, how alcohol is. It's everywhere. We didn't open up an alcohol restaurant and then leave the restaurant. You could just get alcohol at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Extrapolate that out. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying then we should have people fucking sniffing cat, children's soft play areas. That's not what I'm saying. It's horses for courses, and study the public, find out what human behavior is on the mass, find where the problems are and regulate the problems. Do you know what I mean? That's what we did with alcohol and tobacco and these other things. We know they still cause problems, but it's your choice as a free adult to make that decision.
Yeah, and you should have that choice, but be able to make that choice knowing full well that if you do make that choice, that you're doing so in the healthiest and safest way possible.
Informed consent.
I think
yeah,
it should be. That should, like I say, that the more state intervention, the more harm, based on the more harm. And I can't take your point about alcohol, but I mean, I've kind of often argued that maybe the reason alcohol, I mean, we know that alcohol can be damaging if consumed in excess, right? But is alcohol's societal harms, are they so high because, for want of a better option? Like, life's hard, man, right?
Yeah.
Most people want a fucking drink or a joint at the end of the day because, let's face it, going through, I mean, anyone who goes through life stone cold sober and does it well, I applaud you. Life is hard for most people, right? Life is a struggle. I mean, we all want something. And I don't think it's actually a failing to want something to take your mind off the society we live in, right? It's, even if you've got plenty of money, you've still got big problems. But is alcohol's societal harms, at least, and maybe even harms to the human, because it's the only thing we've got, really, legally. It's the only thing I can walk into the shop across the road and buy is a couple of bottles of wine on a Friday night when I've had a shit week. My missus is saying the same thing, like, let's just get a couple of bottles of wine, right? If, next door to that alcohol shop was a cannabis dispensary or a mushroom shop, on a Friday, would I look at it and go, you know what, I'm not really that fussed about the bottles of wine tonight, we'll get some weed, or I'm going to get us a couple of grams of mushrooms each, we're going to giggle it out, right? Is society's problem with alcohol because alcohol is the only option? I don't know. I think maybe.
I think it's socioeconomic, isn't it? Yeah, because it is created because of the structure of society, and it's actually worsened as you go up the scale. If you look at prenatal alcohol syndrome, that is highly prevalent within more of the upper classes. And then when you look at sort of drug problems, if you then consider it to be the reason you end up with so many lower class people caught up is if you're suddenly, you've got 100 grand in the bank and mommy and daddy support you and help you out and whatever else, and you develop a coke problem, there's a long period of time before you need to go rob a granny on the street to make your fix. Do you know what I mean? You've got a lot of resource to burn through in that problematic space. So, and it's a lot more likely that it's not going to be public facing. Whereas if you're already in deprivation or whatever else, it's where we ended up with that whole thing of went after like Frosty Jacks drinkers and White Lightning drinkers, and they demonized the cider homeless. And as you said, they pushed all of these things that you're talking about onto that group, but ignored everybody else's consumption. But the point is that falling off at the end is society's fault. That's not to say that person isn't without blame, but it is to say that the point of society is to make sure that fall off doesn't happen. So for that 95 whatever percent, the 5% or whatever we want to call it, of people that suffer problematic drug use, and that's not to say that it's only that 5%. Anybody at any time could have a period of, you're like, I drank heavy for 6 months and was really in a shit place. And then whatever, it's not, you're not an addict and always an addict sort of thing. People fluctuate, the same with food, with sex, with anything the human body enjoys and responds to. I think we just, as we say, have that bit better acceptance and empathy for each other. We all sin, we just sin differently. You know what I mean? But to answer your question, I think it would be differentiated if there were other drugs entirely. Yeah. And like I said, it sounds controversial because of the stigma around heroin. But actually, heroin is a much safer drug than alcohol long term. It sounds fucked up, but in terms of to your physiological health, it will not fucking kill you at a pure rate. There's a lot of other drugs that we perceive as having these huge harms, that those harms have been massively exacerbated, like you said, because of prohibition. Yet these drugs often work so specifically to a subsection of people that fall into either specific traumas or specific health conditions, physical or mental. And by demonizing the way that they numb their pain is demoralizing, it's dehumanizing. And so I'm trying to always interject these conversations wherever I'm having them with an argument against drug supremacy. of going that we need to not ban anything. I'm pro fucking pulling back the restrictions on tobacco. I know that sounds controversial as shit, but if they can do it for one, they'll do it for all. It's the censorship argument. We have to be mindful that I don't sin that way, but I can't tell that sinner he suddenly can't have his drug. Because what happens if we ban tobacco? We end up with a black market of fucking tobacco. All we do is empower a criminal market. They end up with an adulterated product or a worse product. Their health declines. It's the same with banning abortions. The exact numbers in the States say the same. The only thing you do by making it illegal is make that more unsafe. So we can extrapolate from that, as you say, that decriminalize the people, regulate the supply, understand the culture and consumption, and like I said, regulate that. It to the consumers themselves and people who've had a history in this space, it seems obvious. But like you said, once the money men get in and they're like, how much are these mushrooms worth? How much is this ketamine worth? Lads, invest. Do you know what I mean? They turn it into a commodity, and we're almost fetishizing drug use of being like, oh, I went to Peru and I had ayahuasca. When, yeah, there's kids on the block you live on the house, their houses are getting raided because they're growing weed. Do you know what I mean? Or the guys next door are getting stopped because they've got a little bit of coke in their pocket. Do you know what I mean? The hypocrisy of these things, it's really unsettling to me that for all there is this renaissance, it's who's in charge. You know, MAPS just turned from being a 30-year non-profit, oh, we're going to help free the mushroom, to, oh, we're a for-profit pharmaceutical company now, by the way, lads.